The massive view screen showed nothing but stars and the cold emptiness of space. Marcus Chen stood in the engineering bay of the UGS Leviathan, watching readouts that would have made his professors back on Earth weep with joy. The ship stretched for over 50 kilometers in length, housing a crew of 2 million beings from across the galaxy. And somehow, impossibly, he was the chief engineering officer. Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow as he checked the fusion reactors for the 100th time that day. Each reactor was the size of a city block, and the Leviathan had 24 of them. The ship was a marvel of galactic engineering, built by the United Galactic Council as their flagship vessel. It represented the combined knowledge of over 300 species, each contributing their best technology and brightest minds. "Chief Chen, we have a problem in Reactor Bay 7, came the voice of Zektar, his Vraxian assistant. The insectoid being clicked his mandibles nervously as he approached with a data pad. "The plasma containment field is showing micro-fluctuations. Nothing dangerous yet, but it's outside normal parameters." Marcus nodded and took the pad, his eyes scanning the data quickly. Back on Earth, he had been just another mechanical engineer working on fusion prototypes. His biggest achievement had been designing a more efficient cooling system for experimental reactors. Then the first contact happened, and everything changed. The Galactic Council had been amazed by human engineering intuition. While other species excelled at following established protocols and perfecting existing designs, humans had something unique. They could look at a problem and find solutions that no computer simulation had predicted. They could feel when something was wrong with a machine, even when all the sensors said everything was fine. "The field generators are working perfectly," Marcus muttered, studying the readings. "But the plasma flow is creating resonance patterns that shouldn't exist." He closed his eyes and listened to the subtle hum of the reactor. Other species thought he was crazy when he did this, but sound told him things that numbers couldn't. "There," he said, opening his eyes. "Harmonic interference from the gravitational compensators. They're cycling at 47.3 hertz, and the plasma chamber is naturally resonating at 23.65 hertz. Double the frequency, and you get interference." Zektar's compound eyes widened. "But Chief, the compensators are operating within normal parameters. The computer shows no conflicts." "The computer doesn't account for quantum fluctuations in the gravitational field when the ship turns," Marcus explained. "We need to adjust the compensator frequency by 0.2 hertz. It's a tiny change, but it'll eliminate the resonance." As they made the adjustment, Marcus reflected on how he had ended up here. 3 years ago, he had been selected for the Galactic Engineering Exchange Program. Earth had only recently joined the Council, and they wanted to see what humans could contribute. Most species expected very little. Humans were new to space travel, their technology primitive compared to civilizations that had been traveling between stars for millennia. But Admiral Thissa, the ship's commander and a member of the ancient ethereal race, had seen something in the human engineers that others missed. She had personally requested Marcus for her crew after watching him solve a reactor problem that had puzzled the galaxy's best minds for weeks. The solution had been so simple that other species felt embarrassed they hadn't thought of it. "Field stabilized, Chief," reported Ensign Krill, a young Aquarian whose blue skin glistened under the engineering bay's lights. "All readings are back to nominal." Marcus smiled. His team was incredible, beings from dozens of different worlds all working together. There was Zektar with his mathematical precision, Krill with her intuitive understanding of energy flows, Chief Petty Officer Gornax, whose massive Titan strength could move components that would require heavy machinery for other species, and Dr. Velira, a synthetic being whose processing power exceeded most ship computers. "Excellent work, everyone," Marcus said. "But stay alert. We're entering the Void Sector tomorrow, and that's where things get interesting." The Void Sector was a region of space where normal physics seemed to behave strangely. Ships had been known to lose power suddenly, gravity fields would fluctuate wildly, and some vessels had simply vanished without explanation. The Galactic Council had sent their biggest ship to investigate because smaller vessels kept having problems. "Chief Chen to the bridge," came Admiral Thissa's voice over the comm system. "Please report to the command center immediately." Marcus handed his duties over to Zektar and made his way through the ship's corridors. The Leviathan was like a city in space, with residential areas, shopping districts, parks, and even artificial beaches for species that needed aquatic environments. The main corridor he walked through was wide enough for 6 people to walk side by side, with moving walkways to help cover the vast distances. The bridge was an impressive sight, a multi-level command center with stations for every department. Admiral Thissa stood in the center, her pale blue skin and white hair marking her as one of the ancient ethereals. Her species had been exploring space when humans were still discovering fire, but she had a respect for human engineering that surprised everyone. "Marcus," she said, using his first name as she always did, "we're approaching the edge of the void sector. I want you to monitor our systems personally." "Your people have a gift for sensing problems before they show up on our instruments." "Understood, Admiral," Marcus replied. "I've already briefed my team. We're ready for anything." But as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the void sector, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with temperature. Through the view screen, space looked wrong somehow. The stars seemed dimmer, and there was a quality to the darkness that made his engineer's instincts scream warnings. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Commander Vex, the crystalline species officer at the science station. "No immediate threats detected, but I'm reading some unusual energy signatures deeper in the sector." Admiral Thissa nodded. "Take us in slowly. Maximum alertness on all systems." As the Leviathan began its journey into the void sector, Marcus watched his engineering displays like a hawk. Everything looked normal on the surface, but he could feel something building. The ship's massive engines hummed their normal tune, but there was an undertone that bothered him. It was like listening to a symphony and hearing one instrument slightly out of tune. "Admiral," he said suddenly, "I recommend we reduce speed by 20% and increase power to the structural integrity fields." "Problems, Chief?" Admiral Thissa asked. "Not yet," Marcus admitted, "but something feels wrong. The ship's resonance frequency is shifting slightly. It's subtle, but in my experience, subtle changes usually mean bigger problems are coming." Other officers might have questioned his recommendation. After all, the sensors showed everything operating normally, but Admiral Thissa had learned to trust human intuition. "Make it so," she ordered. As the ship's speed decreased and the structural fields strengthened, Marcus continued monitoring his systems. The feeling of wrongness grew stronger as they penetrated deeper into the void sector. It was like the space around them was somehow thicker, more resistant to their passage. "Chief Chen," came Zektar's voice over the comm, "I'm seeing micro-fluctuations in all our containment fields. Nothing dangerous yet, but the pattern is unlike anything in our databases." Marcus frowned. "Pattern? Describe it." "It's almost like the fields are being probed by some external force, as if something is testing our defenses without triggering our sensors." Before Marcus could respond, the ship shuddered slightly. It was barely noticeable, but on a ship the size of the Leviathan, any movement meant enormous forces were at work. Alarms began to sound softly throughout the bridge. "Report!" Admiral Thissa commanded. "Unknown energy field detected," Lieutenant Commander Vex announced. "It appeared suddenly directly ahead. Distance, approximately 10,000 kilometers." On the main view screen, space itself seemed to ripple like water. The distortion was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, bending light around it in impossible ways. But Marcus wasn't looking at the view screen. He was staring at his engineering displays in growing alarm. "Admiral, we need to stop," he said urgently. "Now." "Full stop," Admiral Thissa ordered without hesitation. The Leviathan's massive engines reversed thrust, bringing the great ship to a halt. But even as they stopped, Marcus could see the energy field growing larger, reaching out toward them like invisible tentacles. "What are you seeing, Marcus?" Admiral Thysa asked. "The field is trying to synchronize with our ship's systems," Marcus explained, his hands flying over his control panels. "It's matching the frequency of our power grid, our engines, even our life support systems. If it succeeds in matching our resonance frequency, the ship could be torn apart from the inside," Admiral Thysa finished. She had seen enough of human engineering intuition to understand the implications immediately. Marcus nodded grimly. "We need to constantly shift our frequencies to prevent synchronization. It'll be like playing a deadly game of musical chairs with our entire power grid." As he spoke, the energy field pulsed brighter and the ship shuddered again. This time, the movement was stronger, and Marcus could hear the groaning of metal under stress even through the Leviathan's massive bulk. "All hands, condition yellow," Admiral Thysa announced shipwide. "This is not a drill." Marcus was already working, his fingers dancing across control surfaces that most humans couldn't even comprehend. But somehow, his mind could grasp the ship's systems as a whole, seeing connections and patterns that escaped even the most advanced computer analysis. "Zektar, I need you to manually adjust the fusion reactor frequencies," he called over the comm. "Start with reactors 1 through 6, shift them up by 0.3 Hz every 30 seconds. Dr. Valera, take reactors 7 through 12 and shift them down by the same amount." "Chief, that will create harmonic interference throughout our power grid," Dr. Valera's synthesized voice protested. "That's the idea," Marcus replied. "We need chaos in our systems to prevent the field from locking onto any stable frequency." As his team implemented his orders, Marcus turned his attention to the ship's other systems. The energy field was adapting faster than he had hoped, learning from each frequency change and adjusting its own patterns accordingly. Whatever intelligence was behind it was far more advanced than anything in the Council's databases. "Marcus," Admiral Thysa said quietly, "how long can we maintain this?" Marcus checked his power readings. Constantly shifting frequencies was putting enormous strain on every system aboard the Leviathan. "Maybe 6 hours before we start seeing cascading failures," he admitted. "We need to find another solution." The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Through the view screen, they could see the energy field spreading, surrounding them on all sides. They were trapped in a sphere of impossible physics, and Marcus was running out of tricks. But as he watched the readings from his sensors, something clicked in his mind. The field wasn't just trying to match their frequencies. It was learning from them. And if it was learning, that meant it could be taught. "Admiral," he said suddenly, "I think I know what this thing is. And I have an idea." Marcus stared at the swirling energy field surrounding them, his mind racing through possibilities that would have seemed impossible just minutes ago. The ship groaned under the stress of constantly shifting frequencies, and he could see the strain on his crew's faces as they fought to keep the Leviathan systems stable. "Talk to me, Marcus," Admiral Thysa said, her voice calm despite the situation. "What's your theory?" "It's not trying to destroy us," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving his displays. "Look at the patterns. This field is curious about us. It's learning our technology, trying to understand how we work. I think we've encountered some kind of space-based intelligence." Lieutenant Commander Vex looked up from her station, her crystalline features reflecting the bridge lights. "The energy signatures are consistent with that theory, Admiral. The field is definitely analyzing our systems, not attempting to damage them." Admiral Thysa nodded slowly. As an ethereal, she had lived long enough to encounter many strange phenomena in space. "If you're right, Marcus, how do we communicate with it?" Marcus was already working on that problem. "We give it what it wants to learn, but in a controlled way. Instead of chaotic frequency shifts, we create a pattern, a message written in the language of engineering." "That's insane," muttered Commander Torkesh, the Maxillian tactical officer. His reptilian features showed clear skepticism. "We're going to try to talk to an energy field using our engines?" "Why not?" Marcus replied, his hands already moving across his controls. "Every intelligent species we've met thinks in terms of patterns, mathematics, physics. If this intelligence is spaceborne, it might communicate through the same principles that govern Starship operations." Admiral Thysa considered this for a moment. "What do you need?" "Permission to take complete control of our power systems," Marcus said. "And about 30 minutes. If I'm wrong, we can go back to the chaos method. But if I'm right, we might learn something incredible." "Do it," Admiral Thysa ordered. Marcus opened a ship-wide channel to his engineering teams. "All stations, this is Chief Chen. We're switching to Communication Protocol 0. I'm going to use our entire power grid as a transmission device. Follow my lead exactly, no matter how strange it seems." In the main engineering bay, Zektar clicked his mandibles nervously. "Chief, what's Communication Protocol 0? That's not in our manuals." "Because I'm making it up as I go," Marcus admitted. "But trust me, when has human improvisation ever led us astray?" "Do you want the full list? Or just this week's incidents?" Dr. Valera's voice carried what might have been humor, if synthetics could be humorous. Marcus smiled despite the danger. "Just follow my lead, everyone." He began with something simple: prime numbers. Using the ship's fusion reactors, he created a pattern of energy pulses that represented the first 10 prime numbers. Each pulse was a carefully controlled fluctuation in their power output, timed to create a mathematical sequence that any intelligence should recognize. The energy field around them pulsed in response almost immediately. Then, incredibly, it began to repeat the pattern back to them. "It's working," breathed Ensign Krill. "The field is responding to our signals." Marcus felt a surge of excitement, but he forced himself to stay focused. Next sequence. Perfect squares this time. He transmitted the pattern for perfect squares up to 100. Again, the field absorbed the information and repeated it back, but this time it added something. At the end of the sequence, it continued with the next 3 perfect squares that Marcus hadn't transmitted. "Admiral," Marcus said, his voice tight with wonder. "It's not just learning. It's demonstrating that it understands the underlying concept." Admiral Thysa leaned forward in her command chair. "Can you try something more complex?" Marcus nodded and began transmitting the Fibonacci sequence. The field learned it quickly and began extending the sequence far beyond what Marcus had sent. But then something unexpected happened. The field began transmitting its own mathematical sequence, something Marcus had never seen before. "Dr. Valera, are you analyzing this?" Marcus called. "Yes, Chief. The sequence appears to be based on multi-dimensional geometric progressions. It's mathematics, but using principles that are beyond our current understanding." Marcus realized they were in the presence of an intelligence that was not only ancient, but possibly more advanced than any species in the Galactic Council. "Let's try something different. Instead of pure mathematics, let's show it how we use physics." He began demonstrating the basic principles of fusion power by modulating their reactors to show the relationship between matter, energy, and the forces that held atoms together. The field absorbed this information with apparent fascination, then began showing them fusion principles that were far more advanced than anything known to galactic science. "Marcus," Admiral Thysa said quietly, "what you're doing here, the implications could change everything we know about space travel, about physics itself." "I know," Marcus replied, "but I think it wants to teach us, not harm us. The question is, are we ready to learn?" The energy field suddenly shifted, and new patterns began flowing across Marcus's displays. This wasn't mathematics or physics. It was something else entirely. The patterns were beautiful, complex beyond anything human art had ever achieved, but they seemed to carry meaning. It's trying to show us how it thinks, Marcus realized. These patterns, they're like its language, its way of understanding the universe. For the next several hours, Marcus and his team engaged in the most remarkable conversation in galactic history. The intelligence, which Marcus had begun thinking of as the Wanderer, showed them perspectives on space, time, and energy that revolutionized their understanding of physics. The Wanderer existed in the spaces between stars, feeding on cosmic radiation and the energy given off by stellar phenomena. It was ancient beyond measure, having observed the birth and death of countless stars. It had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen species evolve from primitive beginnings to spacefaring cultures. But it had rarely been able to communicate with these younger races. Most species' technology was too rigid, too locked into established patterns to allow for the kind of flexible communication that was possible with the Leviathan systems. "Why us?" Marcus asked, transmitting the question through carefully modulated power fluctuations. "Why can you talk to our ship when you couldn't talk to others?" The Wanderer's response was complex, but Marcus gradually understood. Human technology was different because humans thought differently. Where other species followed established engineering principles with rigid adherence to proven methods, humans constantly improvised, adapted, and found new ways to make things work. "Our chaos is what made communication possible," Marcus translated for Admiral Thissa. "Other species' ships are too predictable, too ordered. The Wanderer couldn't find a way in. But our systems are flexible enough, chaotic enough, that it could establish a dialogue." Admiral Thissa was amazed. "What else is it telling you?" Marcus continued his conversation with the Wanderer, learning things that would take scientists decades to fully understand. The entity showed them how to create stable power sources using zero-point energy extraction, how to manipulate gravity fields for more efficient faster-than-light travel, and principles of materials science that could make starships virtually indestructible. But the most incredible revelation came when the Wanderer began showing them other intelligences scattered throughout the galaxy. There was an entire hidden ecosystem of space-borne entities, beings of pure energy and thought that existed in the void between stars. "There are dozens of them," Marcus reported, his voice filled with awe. "Maybe hundreds. They've been watching us, all the younger races waiting for someone they could communicate with." "And that someone is us?" Admiral Thissa asked. The Wanderer pulsed with what Marcus interpreted as amusement. The answer came through not in words, but in concepts that flowed directly into his understanding through the ship's power systems. "Not just us," Marcus translated. "Humans specifically. The way we approach problems, the way we refuse to accept that something is impossible, that's what they've been waiting for. They want to share their knowledge, but they need partners who can think outside established patterns." The revelation was staggering. For millions of years, these ancient intelligences had been waiting for a species that could bridge the gap between their existence and the physical universe. Humans, with their chaotic, improvisational approach to engineering, were that bridge. "What do they want from us?" Admiral Thissa asked. Marcus posed the question and waited for the response. When it came, it changed everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The Wanderer and its kind were dying, not individually, but as a species. They were beings of pure energy, sustained by cosmic phenomena that were becoming increasingly rare as the universe aged and expanded. They needed physical partners to help them create new sources of sustenance, to build technologies that could concentrate and harvest cosmic energies more efficiently. In exchange, they offered knowledge that would advance galactic civilization by thousands of years. "They're offering us a partnership," Marcus said, hardly believing his own words. "They want to teach us how to build technologies beyond anything we've imagined. Ships that can travel instantly between galaxies, power sources that could supply entire star systems, even ways to extend the life of stars themselves." Admiral Thissa stood from her command chair, walking to the view screen to stare out at the energy field that surrounded them. "The decision isn't mine to make alone. This affects the entire Galactic Council, all of our species." The Wanderer seemed to understand, and its response carried patience. It had waited millions of years. It could wait a little longer. "But," Admiral Thissa continued, turning back to Marcus, "I think we need to take the first step. Can you ask if it would be willing to accompany us back to Council space? As our guest, not our prisoner?" Marcus transmitted the request and waited. The response came quickly, carrying what felt like joy and anticipation. "It says yes," Marcus reported, "but it wants to do something first. It wants to give us a gift, something to help convince the Council that this partnership is real." Before Marcus could ask what kind of gift, the Wanderer began transmitting new information. But this wasn't theoretical knowledge. It was practical, immediate applications that could be implemented with existing technology. "It's showing me how to increase our fusion reactor efficiency by 300%, Marcus said, his voice filled with excitement. "Just by adjusting the magnetic field configurations in ways we never thought possible. And our FTL drive, it's showing me modifications that could cut our travel time by half." The knowledge flowed through the ship's systems like water through a dry riverbed. Marcus's engineering teams worked frantically to understand and implement what they were learning. Within hours, the Leviathan had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic engineering. "Power output increased by 280%, reported Chief Petty Officer Gornax, his massive hands gentle on controls designed for much smaller beings. "All systems operating at efficiency levels I've never seen. FTL drive modifications complete," added Ensign Krill. "Theoretical calculations suggest we could reach Galactic Council headquarters in 6 days instead of 2 weeks. Admiral Thissa looked around her bridge, seeing the wonder on every face. "Marcus, thank your new friend for us. Tell it we're honored by its gift and its trust." Marcus transmitted the message and received a response that made him smile. "It says the honor is theirs. They've been alone for so long. They'd almost forgotten what it was like to have someone to talk to." As the Wanderer began to travel alongside them, disguising itself as a natural energy phenomenon to avoid alarming other ships, Marcus reflected on what had just happened. Humanity had just become the first species in galactic history to establish communication with the ancient intelligences of space. But as they prepared to return to Council space with their incredible news, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Wanderer had mentioned other intelligences, other mysteries waiting in the depths of space. And if there was one thing he'd learned about human nature, it was that they never could resist exploring the unknown. The journey back to Council space would give them time to understand their new knowledge and prepare for the changes that were coming. But Marcus suspected that nothing would ever be the same again. The journey back to Council space had taken only 4 days instead of the usual 2 weeks, thanks to the Wanderer's modifications to their FTL drive. Now Marcus stood in the largest conference chamber aboard the Leviathan, watching representatives from 300 species file in for what would undoubtedly be the most important meeting in galactic history. Admiral Thissa had sent word ahead about their discovery, but Marcus could see the skepticism on many faces. The idea that humans had made first contact with ancient space-dwelling intelligences was difficult for some species to accept. After all, humans had only been in space for a few centuries, while some council members had been exploring the galaxy for millions of years. "Chief Chen," came a gravelly voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Counselor Zarthok, a massive Gorgonian whose species had been spacefaring for over 2 million years. I confess I find these claims rather extraordinary. You expect us to believe that primitive human engineering succeeded where our most advanced sciences have failed? Marcus had been expecting this reaction. With respect, Counselor, I don't think it was about our engineering being better. It was about it being different. Different how? This came from Counselor Veluna, an elegant seraphim whose species was known for their technological perfection. We don't follow the rules the same way other species do, Marcus explained. When we encounter a problem, we don't just look up the approved solution in our databases. We improvise, we experiment, we try things that shouldn't work according to theory. That chaos, that unpredictability, that's what allowed the Wanderer to establish communication with us. Chaos is not typically considered a virtue in engineering, Counselor Zarthok rumbled. Maybe that's been the problem, Marcus replied. Maybe we've all been thinking about this wrong. Admiral Thessa stepped forward. Counselors, I understand your skepticism, but the proof is undeniable. The modifications the Wanderer helped us implement have increased our ship's performance beyond anything we thought possible. Our journey here should have taken 2 weeks. We completed it in 4 days. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Even the most skeptical council members couldn't argue with demonstrated results. Furthermore, Admiral Thissa continued, the Wanderer is here with us now, waiting for your permission to make formal contact. The chamber fell silent. Counselor Meltarin, the ancient ethereal who served as council chairman, stepped forward. You're telling us that this intelligence is aboard our flagship? Not aboard, Marcus corrected. Traveling with us. It's maintaining position just outside our hull, disguised as a natural energy phenomenon. It didn't want to alarm anyone. And you believe it's safe to allow this entity into our primary space station? Asked Counselor Veluna. Marcus nodded confidently. The Wanderer has had countless opportunities to harm us over the past week. Instead, it's shared knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of physics and engineering. I believe its intentions are genuinely peaceful. Counselor Zarthok's eyes narrowed. You're asking us to take a significant risk based on your human feelings about this entity's intentions. I'm asking you to trust in demonstrated results, Marcus replied firmly, and to consider what we stand to gain from this partnership. Admiral Thissa activated a holographic display showing the technical improvements they'd implemented. These modifications alone represent advances that would have taken our scientists decades to achieve independently, and according to Chief Chen's communications with the Wanderer, this is just the beginning. The council members studied the data, their skepticism gradually giving way to amazement. The improvements were not just significant, they were revolutionary. What exactly is this entity proposing? Asked Counselor Meltarin. Marcus stepped forward. A knowledge exchange. The Wanderer and others like it have observed galactic civilization for millions of years. They possess understanding of physics, engineering, and cosmic phenomena that could advance all of our species by thousands of years. In exchange, they want our help developing new technologies to sustain themselves as the universe ages. Others like it? Counselor Veluna's voice carried a note of alarm. How many are we talking about? The Wanderer indicates there are hundreds of these intelligences scattered throughout the galaxy, Admiral Thissa replied. They've been waiting for a species that could serve as an interface between their existence and our physical reality. And they believe humans are this interface species? Counselor Zarthok's tone suggested he found this notion absurd. Not just humans, Marcus corrected, but humans working in partnership with other galactic species. Our engineering approach combined with your species' various strengths and knowledge bases. Together, we could accomplish things none of us could achieve alone. Counselor Meltarin was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. This decision affects the entire galaxy. If we proceed, we're committing to a partnership with entities we barely understand. But if we don't proceed, Admiral Thessa pointed out, we're potentially missing the greatest opportunity in galactic history. Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Everything they'd discovered, everything the Wanderer had shown them, hung in the balance of this decision. He thought about his team back in engineering, Zektar, Krill, Gornax, Dr. Valira, all of them working together despite their vastly different origins. If they could make it work, why couldn't the galaxy as a whole? Counselors, Marcus said, I'd like permission to demonstrate something. With your consent, I can ask the Wanderer to show you what it's really capable of. The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Counselor Meltaran nodded. Proceed, Chief Chen, but carefully. Marcus activated his portable communication device, the same one he'd used to establish contact with the Wanderer. Through modulated energy pulses, he transmitted a request for a demonstration of the entity's abilities. The response was immediate. Through the conference chamber's viewports, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. The Wanderer revealed itself, no longer disguised as a natural phenomenon. It appeared as a massive entity of pure energy, easily the size of a small moon, with patterns of light flowing across its surface in complex, beautiful configurations. But the visual display was nothing compared to what came next. The Wanderer began transmitting data directly to the conference chamber's computers, sharing knowledge at a rate that made even the most advanced processors struggle to keep up. It's downloading the complete technical specifications for zero-point energy extraction, Dr. Valira announced from her station. And gravitational manipulation techniques that could revolutionize space travel. Materials science principles for creating substances stronger than anything in our databases, added another technician. Biological enhancement technologies that could extend lifespans across all species, came a third report. The flow of information continued for several minutes, each new piece of knowledge more extraordinary than the last. When it finally stopped, the chamber was silent except for the humming of computers working to process what they'd received. This is just a small sample, Marcus explained to the stunned council members. The Wanderer has been observing cosmic phenomena for millions of years. It understands things about the universe that we haven't even begun to imagine. Counselor Ve Luna was staring at the data streaming across her personal display. The implications of these technologies, we could solve resource scarcity across the entire galaxy, end energy shortages permanently, even begin to address the expansion and cooling of the universe itself. But at what cost? Counselor Zarthok demanded. What do these entities really want from us? Marcus transmitted the question to the Wanderer and waited for the response. When it came, he translated it for the council. They want survival, he said simply. They're beings of pure energy, but the sources they depend on are becoming scarce as the universe ages. They need physical partners to help them develop new ways to gather and concentrate cosmic energy. In exchange, they'll share knowledge that could make all our species truly immortal civilizations. And if we refuse? Asked Counselor Meltaran. Marcus posed this question as well. The Wanderer's response carried a sense of sadness, but also acceptance. They'll continue existing as they have for millions of years, Marcus translated. Alone, gradually weakening, watching civilizations rise and fall without being able to interact with them. They've survived this long. They can survive longer, but they'd prefer not to be alone anymore. The council chamber was quiet as the representatives considered what they'd learned. Finally, Counselor Meltaran spoke. I propose a trial partnership, he said. A limited exchange of knowledge and resources with careful monitoring of the results. If this proves beneficial and safe, we can expand the cooperation. I second the proposal, said Counselor Ve Luna immediately. As do I, added Counselor Zarthok, his earlier skepticism replaced by cautious optimism. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council would enter into formal partnership with the Wanderer and its kind. As the council members began discussing the practical details of implementation, Marcus felt a sense of profound satisfaction. He thought about his journey from a simple mechanical engineer on Earth to the chief engineering officer of the galaxy's largest starship, and now to the architect of the most important alliance in galactic history. Admiral Thissa approached him as the formal meeting began to wind down. "Well done, Marcus. I suspect this partnership will change everything about how we explore and understand the universe." "I hope so," Marcus replied. "But I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The Wanderer mentioned other mysteries out there, other intelligences we haven't even begun to understand." "And knowing humans," Admiral Thissa said with something that might have been a smile, "you'll insist on investigating every one of them." Marcus grinned. "Probably. It's what we do." Over the following months, the partnership with the Wanderer exceeded everyone's expectations. The knowledge exchanges led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Ships that could travel between galaxies in days instead of millennia. Power sources that could sustain entire star systems. Technologies that could manipulate matter at the quantum level to create anything needed. But perhaps more importantly, the partnership opened doors to contact with other ancient intelligences throughout the galaxy. Each entity brought its own unique perspective and knowledge, creating a network of cooperation that spanned space and time. Marcus found himself at the center of it all, serving as the primary liaison between physical and energy-based intelligences. His gift for understanding complex systems and finding innovative solutions made him invaluable in bridging the gap between radically different forms of existence. The Leviathan became the flagship not just of the Galactic Council, but of the new cosmic alliance that emerged from these partnerships. And Marcus, the human engineer who had started out just trying to keep fusion reactors running smoothly, became one of the most important figures in galactic history. Standing in his engineering bay one day, watching his diverse team work on technologies that would have been pure fantasy just years earlier, Marcus reflected on how far they'd all come. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or dominance, but through curiosity, adaptability, and the simple willingness to try new approaches to old problems. "Chief," called Zektar from across the bay, "we're ready to test the quantum energy converter." "Excellent," Marcus replied, moving toward the new device that would revolutionize how starships generated power. "Let's see what we can discover today." As he worked alongside beings from dozens of worlds, guided by knowledge from ancient intelligences older than some stars, Marcus smiled. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and thanks to human curiosity and the willingness of others to embrace new possibilities, they were going to explore every bit of it.